emotion.
Jealousy is the most common motivator of murder.
A pretty passenger escapes a crime scene with a grisly secret.
Who is this woman? Who is this enigma? Who is this trunk murderess?
A seductress flits from romantic meals to murder.
This case was every cheating husband's worst nightmare.
And a bizarre love triangle is shattered in a spiteful bloodbath.
There was a chainsaw dismembering a body in my basement.
Hungry for love, consumed by hate. These are deadly women with hearts of darkness. Jealousy is all too easily disguised behind an innocent face. Like the face of a passenger on a train to Los Angeles in 1931.
She was beautiful, she was sweet, she was pleasant, she was nice. She was kind of everything you'd think a little minister's daughter would be.
Her name is Winnie Ruth Judd. She arrives in a new city with a few pennies in her pocket and a suitcase full of secrets.
These are my bags.
And then they start discovering that the trunk is bleeding.
When the trunk is opened, America will be left reeling.
This is the biggest sensational case in the entire country. Papers all over the nation are writing about this unbelievable situation. The trunks, the bloody trunk. I mean, who is this woman? Who is this enigma? Who is this trunk murderess? It was frantic.
No one knows the tale of Winnie Ruth Judd better than writer Jana Bommersback.
She had every right to believe she would have a white picket fence and a nice little life, and that's not the way it turned out.
Phoenix, Arizona. One night in 1931.
So Jack popped into the office yesterday, and he said that they should be here about 8:30, so...
Roommates Anne Leroy and Sammy Samuelson are in the mood to entertain.
He said he was going to bring a friend. I wonder who he's bringing.
We're here.
Hello. Oh, look.
Tonight,
Sweet, sweet.
their
Sammy,
guests
how are you?
include 26-year-old Winnie Ruth Judd.
Oh, I'm Pete. Pete, this is Pete.
That's my darling.
She was one of the young ladies around town who played a bit and became involved with some very influential political people in Arizona.
Winnie is having an affair with married businessman Jack Halloran.
They called him Happy Jack. And he was, I guess, a man about town, maybe a playboy.
Jack is well connected in Phoenix and likes to mix business with pleasure.
Having a good time there, Pete? Oh, this is great.
Jack Halloran was a tall, good-looking Irish guy who could take his booze and his women in great big doses. He was also a lumberman. He owned a lumber company in town. He was on the Chamber of Commerce. He was on all the city commissions. This was a dandy man, handsome as can be, and he liked to party.
Fun.
Well, you are very good.
But Winnie isn't the only one with eyes for Jack Halloran.
And apparently all three of these women were crazy about this guy, and they all were trying to wheel themselves into the best position.
We have the entire Southwest market covered.
There was a disagreement between these three young ladies, probably over the affections of Jack Halloran.
It's a disagreement that will turn deadly.
Jealousy is the most common motivator of murder.
Criminal profiler Candace DeLong has seen envy explode into homicide all too often.
Jealousy can drive people to violent extremes because it cuts them to their core and it hurts, and the only way the person can stop the pain is to destroy their rival.
The next night, Winnie pays the girls a visit.
It was a Friday night. It was a very hot Friday night, unseasonably warm. Winnie had gone over to have dinner with Anne and Sammy.
Where were the cat dragged in?
Their friendship has soured.
I think we need to talk about something.
I thought I told you to stay away from Jack.
I will do whatever I want to
And
do.
you've been sleeping with him, haven't you?
They start fighting, and they're fighting over Jack. They're all jealous of Jack.
Don't
All right, you need to just leave here right now.
I mean, they were going on and on in this incredible verbal battle, and at that point, everything got very deadly.
Oh, how dare you? Okay, now you need to get out.
No.
No, right now.
Sammy tries to shoot Winnie, and Winnie grapples with her, and they struggle, and the gun goes off.
Winnie is shot in the hand.
She grabs the gun, and in the course of that, she actually shoots Sammy.
What are you doing?
And Winnie says that she took the gun, raised it up, shot at Anne.
Oh, what have you done? No, no, Winnie.
And realized that her two friends were dead.
Winnie Judd has suddenly become a murderer. What happens next will brand her a monster. Phoenix, Arizona, 1931. The lives of two women have ended tonight, and the life of a third has changed forever.
Her friends are dead. At the end of a matter of 5 minutes of going in to talk to them, they're dead.
26-year-old Winnie Ruth Judd has killed her friends in an argument over a man. Now, her thoughts turn to the problem of what to do with their bodies. Union Station, Phoenix. A pretty passenger boards the train for Los Angeles.
Can I help you with this, man?
No, no, it's fine.
No, I'm just gonna.
No.
And she checks the luggage as her luggage to LA and gets on the train. She only has a few pennies for a tip for the porter. She obviously has no money. She can barely afford the ticket to LA.
Winnie Judd has spent all night packing in a desperate attempt to conceal her crimes.
Police surmise that she cut the bodies up and put them in trunks.
She aims to dump the bodies in the Pacific Ocean.
Winnie drives on the train all day and into the next night to Los Angeles. And she gets there and the trunks are unloaded.
Her plan is about to come undone.
Oh, the smell would have been overwhelming. Now, the big thing here is that those bodies were cut up, and particularly when there is a cut through the abdomen. When a loop of bowel is severed, all the bacteria that is present in that bowel is immediately out, very rapidly. So the whole process of putrefaction and decomposition is going to proceed at a much, much more rapid rate.
Hello. These are my bags.
Mr. Johnson, sir.
Here is this trunk that's bleeding, and the bad guy thinks it's contraband deer meat.
Just need to ask you a couple of questions. Is this your luggage?
Yes.
because apparently there was a big smuggling issue between Arizona and California in those days, and he wants the trunk open.
Can you tell me what's inside of it?
Well, just personal items.
Okay, I'm gonna need to see the inside of that luggage.
Just get the keys.
Winnie knows her secret is seeping out.
Oh, my brother has them. My brother has the keys.
Is he here?
He's just at home.
Well, can we call him?
No, I'll just go and get him.
No, really, you need to stay here, ma'am.
She leaves, never to return.
Eventually, they force open the bag,
Oh,
and he sees a woman's head.
oh my God.
Police catch Winnie Ruth Judd a week later. Convicted of murder, she's confined to a mental hospital for the next 40 years. Some believe justice has been served. Others are not so sure.
There was a distinct effort to make sure this woman was convicted and put away. You know, they called her the trunk murderess. They called her the butcher. They said she was a cold-blooded killer and she had cut up her best friend. They gave her one of the longest sentences in the history of the country, 38 years, 11 months, and 22 days. But they were wrong.
In Phoenix today, the murder house still stands. But for Jana Bommersbach, the case against Winnie Judd has collapsed. She believes Winnie was framed in a police investigation that was flawed from the beginning.
They not only let people traipse to the crime scene, they charged 10 cents a head in most of Maricopa County, walk through the crime scene. Before, they collected one shred of evidence, one piece of blood evidence, one piece of any kind of forensic evidence. That crime scene was so trampled, there was no possible way you could ever mount a decent, honest case in that house.
In fact, the investigation is so murky, the police department never established the exact sequence of events leading up to this.
There are also doubts about what happened after the murders. Forensic pathologist Janice Amatuzio thinks Winnie couldn't have cut up a victim alone.
Disarticulation of a human being is an art that, fortunately, most people don't know. In my opinion, somebody with a lot of experience and somebody with a fair amount of strength would be required to disarticulate a human being.
Anne's body was cut apart so precisely that they sewed it back together. It was not hacked to pieces like they said in the media. It wasn't shreds and shards of bone and flesh. This thing was dissected. It looked like an operation. Only a surgeon could have cut apart that body.
Oh my God. Winnie!
Jana thinks the body was dismembered by a surgeon, organized by Jack Halloran.
Obviously, this woman did not do this crime alone. You had to be a nincompoop to think that. You had to be blind, deaf, and dumb to even consider that Winnie Ruth Judd, on her own, killed these women in cold blood, disposed of these bodies, dismembered this body, took the trunks, the whole thing. It was absurd. And what they were trying to cover up is who else had helped her, like Jack Halloran.
Is it a case of a powerful man framing a vulnerable girl?
Listen to me. Go to your apartment now. Go!
In the 1930s, women didn't have much in the way of power, even in this country. They had rights, but they didn't have the power, they didn't have the authority, they didn't have the influence. And it's easy to see how a young woman who had been involved with a married man and ended up on the wrong side of a gun with both her friends dead could be easily framed and sent away.
Winnie Judd is finally released in 1971. Age 66. Returning to Phoenix, she finds a town divided about her guilt. But Jana Bommersbach has no doubts. She befriends Winnie and comes to believe in her innocence.
Winnie Ruth Judd passed away in 1998, surrounded by friends and people who loved her and cared for her, and who by now knew that she was not the horrible woman that history had said she was.
Murderous butcher, or framed innocent. The truth about Winnie Ruth Judd may never emerge. All that's known for sure is her problems began with a jealous heart. When a deadly woman strikes, the world can change in an instant. As it did for a husband returning home around midnight in January 1989.
So he walked in the apartment, and then when he looked, he saw his wife laying on the floor.
Betty, Betty, Betty.
And that's when he discovered an enormous amount of blood.
Paul Solomon calls 911, but it's too late.
Hello?
His wife is dead.
I think my wife's been shot.
Sergeant Richie Constantino is the first detective on the scene.
There was a large puddle of blood that she was lying in, and you could see that she had gunshot wounds to her body.
A seasoned New York cop, Constantino quickly has a prime suspect.
Any type of homicide, you'd always look at the person who saw the victim last and the person who found the victim. And that person was Paul Solomon, the husband.
Police sense Solomon is hiding something. His wife, Betty Jean, had the same feeling earlier that day.
Yeah, I'm going bowling. Remember?
Paul tells his wife of 15 years he is going out with friends.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
The next time he sees Betty Jean, she will be dead.
Going bowling now, so you have a good night.
When Paul Solomon left the house, he used the excuse or the alibi that he was going to the bowling alley to bowl, when in fact his intention wasn't to go bowling.
Paul Solomon has lied to his wife so he can cheat on her with 25-year-old Carolyn Warmus.
Carolyn Warmus was a very attractive woman. She had a lot of energy. She had an incredible body.
To crime writer Diane Fanning, Carolyn Warmus is a classic femme fatale.
Very short skirts, revealing tops. She wanted to attract the attention of men, and she did it very well.
The couple meet at the school where they work. Carolyn doesn't mind that Paul is married. That is part of his appeal.
She had a thing for married men, and that was who she preferred having relationships with. And Paul Solomon was not the first one, the most serious one, but not the first.
3 years earlier, she is dating another man.
He was a medical student. His name was Paul Lavin, and she dated him and had a very torrid affair, even though he was engaged.
Carolyn repeatedly got involved with men who were unavailable to her. Those are guaranteed to be unhappy relationships.
Maybe you're not what I need.
When Lavin tries to end the affair, it flicks a switch in Carolyn's mind. She changes.
And when those relationships didn't work out, which they were bound not to, she was left with hurt feelings. And when she was hurt, she would become a stalker.
She stakes out her ex-lover's house, waiting to steal him from his fiancée.
She used to send notes to Paul Lavin saying she was pregnant, and in fact she wasn't, trying to get him to be with her.
Those phone calls yesterday, that was her, yeah.
I really think she thought she could win him back if she just persisted in stalking him and harassing him. That doesn't work for most people, but I think she thought that it would.
Laban is angry. He wants Carolyn out of his life.
They had to get a restraining order against her so they can get married.
Carolyn has fought for love and lost. Next time, it will be different. New York, 1988. Carolyn Warmus has attracted another attached man, Paul Solomon.
Carolyn came along, she was a breath of fresh air. His ego was flattered that a 25-year-old woman would want to be involved with him. And that's how it began.
Before long, Solomon is talking of divorcing his wife and marrying Carolyn instead. He thinks she has the face of an angel. What he doesn't know is she also has a heart of darkness.
This case was every cheating husband's worst nightmare. What could be worse than to fool around and then be stalked by a crazy woman who kills people?
Treetops Lounge in Yonkers, New York, 1989. A place where couples can indulge in secret affairs, away from prying eyes. Couples like Carolyn Warmus and Paul Solomon.
It was a secret because Paul Solomon was a married man, and he kept the affair quiet, obviously.
Paul doesn't know it yet, but there's no need for secrecy anymore. His marriage ended a half an hour before in a hail of bullets.
She's dangerous. If I was Paul Solomon, I'd be concerned.
Solomon's lover is a pretty girl from a privileged background and a woman consumed by a destructive desire.
Carolyn wanted to break up other marriages. She wanted to be the reason a man left his wife. It was the way to give meaning to her life if she could be the seductress who took the man away.
Carolyn's greatest desire remains unfulfilled. She's been dumped by a series of attached men, starting with the first man she ever loved.
Carolyn lost her father out of her daily life when she was a young girl. Her father left the family to go with another younger woman. And I think that set into motion some serious psychological problems for Carolyn because she felt abandoned by her father.
Every time a man leaves, she feels abandoned again. When Paul Solomon starts to pull away, she decides it's time to fight back.
When she found out that he wasn't going to divorce his wife, she felt that she had to take matters into her own hands, and she did.
It's a Sunday evening in 1989. Carolyn calls Paul Solomon and asks him to meet her at Treetops Lounge. His wife, Betty Jean, is home alone.
Meanwhile, Carolyn is sneaking over to the house. No one's sure how she got in.
Betty Jean has met Carolyn before, but this visit is a surprise.
He's my husband.
And so is the gun.
Now here's my chance to do what I want to do. I want Paul Solomon, and I'll take Betty Jean Solomon out to get him.
No, sir, I can't!
She shot Betty 9 times.
She wanted total destruction. She was in competition with Betty Jean, and she wanted her destroyed.
10 minutes later, Carolyn Warmus meets her lover.
Good, how are you?
She's just fired 9 bullets into his wife.
It was unbelievable that she could kill another woman in cold blood, leave her bleeding on the floor, and just flit off to a romantic little restaurant, sit down and dine and laugh and have a wonderful time.
But Carolyn is not capable of feeling guilt.
But let's concentrate on you and me.
She was calm because she's a sociopath. She had no guilt about what she did, and she wasn't particularly nervous at all about being caught.
At last, Carolyn has Paul to herself. She has fought for a married man and won. Now it's time to celebrate.
And they left together, and in the parking lot, they went to Carolyn Warmus's vehicle where they engaged in sex.
So it was a cold and horrible thing that she did. Take someone's life and then go have fun.
For Paul Solomon, the fun comes to a halt when he gets home. To Detective Constantino, Solomon is evasive.
Betty, come on.
But when he realizes he is a suspect in his wife's murder, he admits where he's been that night.
He admitted that he went to meet Carolyn Warmus at a place called Treetops Lounge in Yonkers.
Paul Solomon doesn't believe Carolyn killed his wife. Police are not so sure. After months of painstaking detective work, they connect her to the crime. She is convicted of second-degree murder.
At her sentencing, she stood up there and insisted she was innocent. She was going to jail for a horrible crime that she did not commit, and yet all the evidence made it clear.
By this time, her man has turned against her.
And she was very bitter because Paul was supposed to stick beside her and be there with her, and he just refused.
The worst fear of Carolyn Warmus is to be abandoned and alone. But that is just where she finds herself today, in prison for 25 years. A heart of darkness can turn an ordinary home into a house of horrors. Jackie Chesmore has seen it happen.
I just want to advise to other people, beware. You cannot trust people. They may look innocent, they may have a smile, but check their behaviors, their references, because there's a lot of bad people out there and they may be living in your home.
In Jackie's basement, blue paint covers the stains of a grisly crime. But memories can't be painted over so easily.
I was just totally disgusted, totally blown away when I found out there was a chainsaw dismembering a body in my basement. It's something that I certainly will never forget.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 2006. Detective Troy Duncan investigates the disappearance of a local deaf woman, Darlene Vandergiesen,
The majority of missing person cases we have, the people turn up and there's a logical, reasonable explanation of where they had been.
But Darlene's disappearance has her family fearing the worst.
Darlene's parents, family, and friends were gathered at Darlene's apartment, trying to put their heads together, trying to gather their wits to try and figure out where Darlene might be.
Dee Vandergiesen welcomes a visit by her daughter's friends. One of them is Darlene's killer.
She embraced Darlene's mother. She said to her mother, "I know that your daughter is missing. I am praying for you. I pray for her safe return." She said these things to Dee Vandergiesen within hours of having dismembered Darlene's body and disposing of it in a dumpster.
The previous spring, the sun is shining in Sioux Falls. For Sally Collins and fellow deaf woman Daphne Wright, the world seems a happy place.
Sally was a friend of Daphne's, and she had moved in at the same time Daphne had in August the year before.
Their landlady, Jackie Chesmore, doesn't realize that Daphne and Sally are lovers. Deafness is the common bond that unites the couple. Local journalist Joss Vergis discovers that for Daphne, deafness has also been a barrier.
Daphne was the first deaf child born to hearing parents. Her father was an alcoholic. Her mother used limited signing to communicate with her and didn't really learn sign language until Daphne was in high school. So it was not a pleasant upbringing.
Daphne's childhood made her feel unwanted. It lays the foundation for a dangerous insecurity.
I think Daphne was on a path to explode one day on someone.
Over time, Daphne's demeanor changes. She becomes possessive, jealous,
Daphne could be kind of jealous and controlling and angry at times.
Sally gets a glimpse into her lover's dark heart. She doesn't like what lurks there.
Not long before the murder, Sally broke up with Daphne.
A month after their breakup, Daphne visits Sally at her new apartment. She wants to make amends. But there's a problem. Sally has a new friend, Darlene Vandergiesen.
She was a deaf woman. She lived alone. She was a very popular employee with her colleagues.
State's Attorney Dave Nelson would later prosecute Darlene's killer.
One of the tragic parts about this case is that so many of us who were involved in it never got a chance to meet Darlene because she sounds like she was really a remarkable woman.
She may have been remarkable, but to Daphne, she represents one thing, a threat.
Daphne Wright was wanting to reestablish the relationship with Sally Collins, and she believed Darlene Vandergiesen was a threat to being able to accomplish that. Got to a point where she felt that the only way she was going to be able to reestablish that relationship with Sally was to remove Darlene Vandergiesen from the picture.
Falls, South Dakota. Scavengers swarm on a landfill site. Not all the secrets that are dumped here remain buried.
A search was conducted of the landfill in probably 10 days of a very frigid South Dakota February. Her legs were found at the landfill. Her torso was found in the landfill in separate pieces.
The body parts belong to a local deaf woman named Darlene Vandergiesen. A week earlier, she meets another deaf woman for a meal, Daphne Wright. Daphne has been trying to get back with her ex-girlfriend, Sally. And lately, Darlene seems to be in the way.
Daphne became jealous of the relationship between Sally and Darlene, and she took extraordinary steps to try to keep Darlene away from Sally Collins. She was motivated by jealousy.
But tonight, Daphne's jealousy seems forgotten.
Daphne Wright scheduled a meeting with Darlene Vandergiesen here in Sioux Falls to occur on February 1st. She did that ostensibly to meet Darlene to plan for a birthday celebration or a Valentine's celebration for Sally Collins. That was a charade. It was a pretense in order to get Darlene to come to the restaurant.
Darlene walks into a fatal trap.
No one really knows what's happened other than the two people involved, but police suspect that Daphne somehow forced Darlene into her truck and took her to her home, killed her somehow, and then the gruesomeness happened after that.
At the time of the murder, Daphne is living at Jackie Chesmore's house. One afternoon, she sees Daphne in the basement, dragging a large bundle.
And it looked like something was rolled up in there. And I looked down there, and my first thought was, what is this? And I almost went down there. I asked her if she needed help, and she immediately signed no, she needed no help, and signed me to go away.
Jackie is haunted by what might have happened if she descended those stairs.
I do believe if I had gone down there, I would have had to either been complacent with her and help her take the body out, or she would have taken care of me also. Daphne would have had to have done something to keep me from talking.
Daphne doesn't dispose of the body right away. For 2 days, it lies in the basement. She's waiting for something.
The defendant was broke. She had no money. She received a government disability check, coincidentally, on February 3rd, that Friday.
So at that point is when she finally had enough money to go out and purchase a chainsaw for $53 at the hardware store.
Now, Daphne can get to work.
Daphne could have taken the body to a ditch or a dumpster area, something. She chose to wait because she wanted to chop her up. Evidence of the intense rage within her.
Her weapon of choice splatters DNA clues from floor to ceiling. Clues she will try to hide. A week after the murder, police investigate threatening emails sent to Darlene before her death. They come from Daphne Wright's home.
Daphne Wright was questioned by law enforcement about a week after the disappearance of Darlene Vandergiesen. She told them a pack of lies.
In Daphne's basement, police find some grim evidence.
We found in the concrete floor what we thought were cut marks that could possibly come from a chainsaw.
They found fresh blue paint on the walls. It became clear that it was used to cover something up. They later figured out that there were tiny bits of Darlene's flesh in there, flesh and bone.
Chainsaws are rarely used in dismemberment cases. They may be popular in Hollywood movies, but in fact, in real life, they're not used very much. So when we do see it, it certainly makes big headlines and paints the murderer as particularly evil and gruesome.
Parts of Darlene's body turn up in a Sioux Falls landfill. Others in a roadside ditch. Clues from the body and the crime scene prove Daphne Wright's guilt.
We had evidence of motive, we had evidence of opportunity, we had physical evidence, we had the defendant's own statements, we had DNA, we had a tidal wave of evidence against this defendant. Daphne Wright was convicted of 2 counts of murder in the first degree.
A deaf woman who had a difficult childhood. Daphne Wright killed to defend the only love she'd known. But when jealousy entered her heart, it clouded her vision.
She thought that Darlene Vandergiesen was out to destroy her relationship with Sally Collins. That was not true.
Darlene was heterosexual and known to date men. The motive for her murder was unfounded jealousy.
Darlene and Sally Collins had struck up a friendship. They obviously enjoyed playing cards together and doing things together, but we believe they were only friends.
There was no intimate relationship. It was all in Daphne's head. That tells me that Daphne had a very dark and dangerous rage growing inside her, probably for a long, long time.
For Daphne Wright, the guilty verdict means life behind bars. For Jackie Chesmore, it means freedom from a life of fear.
When Daphne was sentenced, it was exhilaration. I knew that she would never come back to my home. I knew I would never have to worry about her coming back to my house and doing anything to hurt me.
These deadly women were consumed by a poisonous emotion. Winnie Judd dispatched her rivals in bloody trunks. Carolyn Warmus lashed out at the wife who stood in her way. And Daphne Wright unchained her rage on a woman who posed no threat at all. When jealousy entered their thoughts, murder was just a beat away in their hearts of darkness.